Are we ready? It's our
I
8:31,
think
so
I
let us
think we're
begin.
ready. Yeah. Okay. Eric.
Okay, and what I was going to say was that this is going to be the last of our 52. This is number 52, a whole year. And again, let me just apologize to all those who sent me lots of materials. I had a big pile when I looked at it before. I decided not to speak about it because some of these things are from 5 months ago, and it's really not relevant to what we're doing anymore. And when we finish, we'll start anew with a new series. So then we'll have all sorts of other stuff. After all, what does it say in Avos, Rabbi Tarfon, that the task is not yours to complete? So he couldn't complete anything. That actually is from Avos. I listened to the talk 2 weeks ago, the last one I gave, when I said that you learn most from your students. So you have you learn from your teachers and then your colleagues. And I said it's all in Avos. It's actually not. That's in Maseches Tainis. So, but just a couple of things before we begin with the letters. I think we'll do 2 letters. I could do 3, but I think we'll do 2 that weren't included. 2.5, let's say. Just I wanted to point out one thing because someone asked me when I said that I meant something, but I wasn't clear. When we spoke about the size of the kazayis, and I said that we have samples from 2,000 years ago. What I meant was we have pits. I don't, as far as I know, unless it would be frozen, you wouldn't have an actual kazayis. So we see the pits. We know the size of the pits. We have olive trees from that long ago also. You can see it incidentally in Slifkin's book. He has all the details. Rationalism versus mysticism, right off the presses here, page 213 and 214. And Rav Aryeh Leib asks a good question. Well, but we know that I said there was olives in Spain. And he sent me something that there are olives in France. How could the Tosafos not know about olives? And by the way, there's other proofs that people in Ashkenaz didn't know what olives were. Rabbi Leib, what you sent me deals with Provence. Now, I know that today Provence, you can travel very easily, but Provence is sort of like Catalonia. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that these things made it into northern France. 2 more things. I said last class that there's only, other than me and Susanna, David Eisen, I don't know if anyone's interested in the Dikduk. And yes, there are other people who happy to say that they are interested. So I actually, if time wasn't even that issue, I was going to throw out another interesting tidbit, but I'm not going to throw out an interesting grammatical tidbit. Instead, I'm going to tell you something. I'll tell you something, which I don't know if Rabbi Kelman knows. It's a Toronto connection. So I'll end it with something grammatical about Toronto, which I was surprised, as you'll see why. I have this book. You got to come to my house one day. Anyone's interested in grammar. I got lots of books, as you can see. Mel says it seems like I have every book we speak about. Sometimes it could be true, but I have this book. It's called Kovet Sifrei Talmei Amikra. Look how big this is. It's a collection of, I think, 27 volumes, sections of them dealing with trup and grammar. It's by someone. He unfortunately passed away, Yehuda Aryeh Gutman. He lived in Brooklyn. I got this book from his widow, who now lives in Miami Beach. He wrote other books as well, and he came out with tapes, and he reprinted lots of grammar books. He's one of these like eccentric people from the very Haredi world who thought it was a big problem that we don't know Dikduk, we don't know Talmei Mikra. After all, when the Maskilim were around, there was a reason not to, but today there's not. Well, in the introduction to this book, he thanks the 4 great people who helped him on grammatical things. So for Israel, it shouldn't surprise you, and he calls these are the Chachmei HaDikduk, who are known by everyone. Rabbi Mazuz, obviously, he's the greatest grammatical expert in Israel, I guess, in the yeshiva traditional world. And Rabbi Saraya Dublitsky. I don't know if the name means anything to you, but he was just passed away a few years ago. He didn't have a beard, but he was a great Torah scholar, also a Kabbalist. And Rabbi Shlomo Pick, if the name means anything to you, former YU guy, he lives in Bnei Brak now, teaches at the Bar Ilan Kollel. He's published a couple books, well, one book on the Rav, and also some articles in Badad. He is the Gabbai, or he was the Gabbai of the Shul of Rabbi Dublitsky. Then he thanks, in America, the Chachmei HaDikduk. Who are they? One is Rabbi Belsky from Torah Vadas. I always knew that Rabbi Belsky had grammatical interest. Not everything he says, by the way, is so convincing, Rabbi Belsky, but he was a great, wise person in Dikduk. that shouldn't surprise you because he wasn't conventional. Just to give you one example, he wore tchelos. In the Haredi world, they don't wear tchelos generally. That's had they come up with it, maybe they would have. But since it was come up by the religious Zionists, it's going to take a while before they're willing to accept it. But he wore the tchelos, so much so that incidentally, there's this Dayan in Eretz Yisrael in the Haredi world who actually says, I am totally convinced, I'm going to write about this one day. He says, I'm totally convinced that the tchelos is 100% correct, but we still shouldn't wear it because of, it'll affect the Masorah, things like that. On the Otzer Chachma forum a few years ago, there's a lot of discussion about this. Since if you're convinced that this is the real tchelos, then how can you have then how could you not wear it just because of politics? Okay, but so that's Rabbi Belsky. And who is the fourth expert in grammar that he used as a guide? None other than Rabbi Shlomo Eliyahu Miller, Rosh Kol of Arechim in Toronto. I had no idea that Rabbi Miller, great Talmud Chacham, a student of Aaron Cutler, who is known as has a reputation of being a kanai, a zealot. I'll leave it to other people to judge that. But usually you don't think of people like that as being experts in dikduk. They're mostly just shas and poskim, and yet we see that Rabbi Miller is also an expert in dikduk, which, as I said, most people wouldn't expect, because a typical Rosh Yeshiva, you don't expect them to have an interest in that. So that was news to me, and that's the Toronto connection. And finally, I want to share one more thing with you, which I think you will remember. I'm going to try to pull something on the screen here, just because I said he didn't have a beard, Rabbi Dublitsky. So I'm going to show you what I meant by that. When I think of a beard, I think of a real beard. Here's his pictures, just so you can see, Rabbi Dublitsky. That's a beard, I guess. But it's not what we think of when we think of a beard. This is a small beard, a little beard. That's not what they call a beard when in yeshiva circles. But I guess you could say he had a little bit of a beard. So Kabbalistically, most think you shouldn't cut the beard at all, nothing. But there's Rabbi Dublitsky. Actually, it's already 16 years ago or more than that. He passed away, or I guess. Okay, so that's Rabbi Dublitsky. His son and his grandson are big chachamim as well. I want to share with you something. The last thing we do is our introductory things. I think you all remember this. And what does it relate to? It relates to women. I'm going to tell you something which no one knows about. I shouldn't say no one knows about it. Yonah Emanuel knows about it. I just did a search on Otzer Chachma. There's only like 3 people who know about this. One is Yonah Emanuel, who we were discussing, and I didn't even know he knew about it till about 2 hours ago. But it's about the women's issue. Wise women, because I listen to, and I encourage you to watch or listen to, you should watch it on YouTube, the Rabbanit, because she has this like infectious smile. She's always smiling. Rabbi Kelman put her on, and it's interesting. It raises all sorts of issues, which we spoke about. Bar Ilan recently appointed also a woman spiritual leader. And this is a matter, it's not going to go away. And it's interesting. The difference between America and Israel, although I do think even in America, it's going to be accepted. Not that most shuls will have this, but I'll just give you an example. The OU came out with a statement that you can't have women clergy, and yet there are still shuls as we speak that have women clergy, and they're not going to throw them out. So if you have a rule that you don't enforce, then it's really not a rule. So what you'll have basically is you'll have some shuls that'll have it and most will not. But since you have some shuls that have it, that's going to be viewed in people's minds as within the rubric of orthodoxy, because if the Orthodox Union allows it in practice, and this is really it's the result of the direction that modern Orthodoxy went when it decided to open up advanced Torah study to women. You sort of couldn't get around this. And we spoke about the problems that YU has and the RCA. In the OU statement, it says that women can speak publicly and teach Torah. They just can't have a permanent position because they say, well, that goes against the Masorah. But if you're in the Haredi road, you'd say that speaking even occasionally goes against the Masorah as well. I mean, for a woman ever to speak in front of men about Torah matters, or even to learn Gemara for that matter, this goes against the Masorah. So I don't know where we're going to end up with this. What I want to say, however, is that you can listen to me 10 years ago when I first began this, and something came about the women's issue. And I said at the time that, all this women's learning is very nice, but at the moment, you can't compare it to the men, because you can't show me any of the women they're learning, but you can't show me anything, any results, any tachlis where they've actually done anything, which you can show. Don't just tell me someone's sitting and learning, show me in practice what's been accomplished. And I don't like tokenism. I don't like identity politics. You need to have the substance. Here we are now, 10 years later, and there is the substance. And look, I'm not embarrassed in the slightest to say that a bunch of these women can learn a lot better than I can. I mean, they're spending their time learning Shas and Poskim when I'm doing all this other interesting stuff. But that's not the meat and potatoes of people who want to be great Torah scholars. So I had some correspondence with a couple people about this, because you are going to have, you have a volume of Shelos and Shuvot of a woman, and then they're going to become great Torah scholars. So where that's going to lead to, we shall see. No one can say that they're not very learned and achieving good things. So I'm going to show you something now that's going to should blow you away, because we know there's a few things, the Chidam mentions it, Rabbi Kelman referred to it, under Rabbanit, where there's a couple famous things mentioned that women pointed out things. I'm going to show you something which you'll remember, that a woman is quoted as saying, and it actually is brilliant. And I thought of this because someone commented to me something like, well, will women Torah scholars ever be accepted outside the so-called modern Orthodox world? I don't know if Yeshaya Pick could quote it. So let me share this with you now. Who am I going to quote it from? Remember I mentioned Rabbi Isaiah Berlin, Isaiah Pick, not to be confused with the famous philosopher Isaiah Berlin, who I was together with once. He had some Chabad connection as well. He had the tefillin of one of the Chabad Rebbes, but that's not what we're speaking about. We're speaking about Isaiah Pick, Isaiah Berlin, big Gaon in the 18th century. He wrote a number of books. Here's you can read about him here. I picked up years ago this sefer. It's 4 books in one. Why did I get it? Sifrei Rabbeinu Yeshaya Pick, because the second sefer of the 4 is called Omer HaShichacha. And this sefer is all the places that the Gemara, halachas, that are not recorded in the poskim, in particular the Rambam. And that was of interest to me when I wrote my article on Rambam and superstition, because he doesn't mention various superstitions. But lo and behold, this also has something called Mine Targuma, which is his commentary on Targum Onkelos. But he also deals with Rashi on it. So I want to tell you what he's going to quote something now from his sister. His sister's name is Kreindel. His sister Kreindel was married to Rav Yosef Steinhardt, the author of the responses Zichron Yosef. Even people who've been to yeshiva and only studied Shas and Poskim have heard of this, because the Mishnah Berurah quotes it in the Be'er Halacha about Rav Yosef Steinhardt in second half of the 18th century attacks mixed dancing. This already was starting to become popular, so that's like a classic source, the earliest source to attack mixed dancing. And he actually quotes his wife, Yosef Steinhardt quotes his wife, who pointed out something interesting at one of the Otzros. But I'm going to show you what Rav Yeshaya Pick quotes in the name of his sister, Kreindel. His sister is also famous. She supposedly said as follows, just to show you her her intellect or her sharpness, that once the kids were all playing and making a lot of noise and the father comes in, I guess maybe it's her husband, and all of a sudden the kids are quiet and everything, and she says, Misha nichnas av mematim besimcha. When the father comes in, they stop having fun. Of course, it doesn't mean that. It means it's a double entendre here. It means when Av begins, we're not so happy. But I'm going to show you something, what Kreindel pointed out, that if this isn't Torah truth, let me put it on the screen here. No one pointed this out. Throughout all the generations, this was not pointed out until we got to Kreindel. Where we get to Kreindel here. Okay. In Perek Lamed Beis 32, Pasuk 5 of Vayishach, we got a famous verse here where it says, Yaakov says, Im Lavan Garti, that he dwelled with Lavan. and he's tarried until now. So Rashi, it's very famous. This is from the Midrash. He quotes it that Im Lovan harasha garti v'tayag mitzvot shamarti. That is, the word garti are the same letters as taryag. So although I lived with Lavan, I observed the garti. I lived with him. I observed the taryag mitzvos. And that obviously is not to be taken literally, of course, not taryag mitzvos. It means he remained religious, and that's going to be a great sermon because no matter what environment you're in, how difficult it is, you can strive to observe Torah just like Yaakov did. What people don't often call attention to is the first part. So I want to show you something now, the first part of this Rashi. It says, Garti, I dwelled. It says, Lo naseti sar v'chashuv el ger. He says, I did not become an officer or a dignitary. This is Yaakov saying, but a stranger, ger. In other words, I was like a wanderer. Then he says, Eincha kedai lisnooti. It's not worthwhile for you to hate me. Al birchos avicha. He's saying to Esav, you shouldn't hate me based on the blessings that your father gave me, our father. What did he say? Hevigvir lachicha. That's the blessing. Here it is in verse 27. The blessing is in verse 29 here that the nations are going to bow down to you. Heve gevir lachecha. You'll be lord over your brethren. That's what it says. So he's saying that you don't have to hate me because it was not fulfilled. He says it, lo niskaima bi, because I was a ger. What does that mean? What does he say here? This is what Kreindel says. It's incredible. Look at this. Watch the Hebrew. The bracha was, you will be a gevir to your over your brothers. A gevir, a master. And what does he say? Don't hate me because this lo niskaima bi. This was not fulfilled in me. If you say the bracha of gevir was not fulfilled be in me. What did Kreindel say? Kreindel says that the meaning of this Rashi, the meaning of the Midrash is as follows. It was not fulfilled in me, be. Take away the be from Gevir. All you have left is Ger. I'm going back to the screen here because I want to, I'm hearing noises here and I want to, whoever it is, I want to, if I can see it here. Hold on a second. I will make sure that no one else is. Okay. Now we're all quiet. Let's go back here for a second. Just show you this again. This is what Kreindel said. The bracha was not fulfilled in me. That is, there was no be in Gvir, which leaves you with only Ger. So that's what Yaakov means when he says, I was not made an important person, only a ger, only a stranger. I'm only a ger, a stranger, because the be of gevir has been removed. So I'm not a gevir, I'm a ger. That was pointed out by Kreindel. And if Rishaya Pitt can quote his sister, he calls her, I have the sefer right here, he calls her a Yada b'chol kedusha ve'yodat sifrei chachmaniot v'doshaniot kivanot slofad Marat Kreindel, and then he says, "This is the woman asher hochicha b'sichla hazach b'mofes." I mean, he's saying that she came up with this. All the great rabbis, all these years, no one could explain why Yaakov says I was a ger. What do you mean a ger? This isn't the Rav ger v'toshav anochi or something. So this is Kreindel. Try to remember this because it's one of the most striking interpretations ever offered by a woman, and we're talking a couple hundred years ago. I don't think any of those women at Nishmat and at Migdal Oz and at Lindenbaum know this, so they should put this on the wall there, Gevir and be Ger, because that's great. Okay, my friends, we are now moving in, which I thought would be the final. If it's not, I can always go one more class. But I did want to do letters that didn't make it into the book. I have all these letters. A couple didn't make it into the book, and let me explain to you why. Well, first, of course, some didn't make it into the book because they came too late. That's obvious. Let me show you something here. Hold on now. to make sure I can get it on my screen here. Now it should work for you. Some came too late, and I continue. Although I'm not the same person I was, I'm not writing that much, but I do think I'll be able to one day again. Hold on, I got to get things on my screen here. I think I'll be able to publish another volume, not of the books, not of only of the letters, but of other things as well. What do I mean by other things? I think I can include, I have lots of letters of Gedolim, I have Hebrew articles, but there will be letters. So some of these will be included. So for example, here's one that, let's see, I take a look at the dates here. But I have a bunch of these. So this is left to Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, Tafshin Pei. So that's just 2 weeks ago, but I just got this. So this is from Rabbi Mazuz. By the way, what happened was he quoted something from Hatzofer when he was like 11 years old in Tunis. He remembered it word for word. I found it on the computer. I sent to it and I said, unbelievable memory. And he writes to me, don't be so impressed with my little memory. They say that Geveret Nachama Leibovitz would say to her students, 80 years ago, I heard this question. And when they would laugh at this, she would say to them, it's true. I heard it 80 years ago. So, so there's letters, of course, that I received, although, like I said, I don't write that much anymore, but there's that. There's also things I misplaced. There were some letters I misplaced. And only after the book was published, for instance, I found a letter from a rabbi. His name was Avram Chamami. He wrote this book. He's a Yemenite, Minchat Avraham. Very nice book of responsa. I guess this is volume 1, who included the letter in volume 2. He also edited these volumes. 3 volumes of the responsa of Rabbi Kafech. We have a few classes of Rabbi Kafech with his notes. I wrote to him. Why did I write to him? Because I wanted to know about the practice, the Yemenite practice of when Yemenites put on their tefillin, they Ashkenazim and Sephardim, based on Kabbalistic reasons, it seems, they put the tefillin on, they do the hand, they get it to the bottom of the arm, and then they put the head, then they wrap the fingers. The Yemenites wrap the whole thing at once. They just do the fingers, everything, arm and fingers, and then do the head. I'll show you this. I'll show you what the Rambam says about this. Let's get to the Rambam here. Here's the Rambam. Rambam says that you tie the tefillin on your arm, and afterwards put on the head tefillin. The pshat is, this is for those who are listening. This is, let's see, what parak is this? It's tefillin 4, chapter 4, halacha 5. So the pshat is that you just, the Rambam says, of course, you do one bracha. Sephardim today do one bracha, but the pshat is that you just do the arm, including the fingers, and then you do the head. I was surprised to see that Rabbi Chamami points out that, lo and behold, Moshe Sternbach, he holds halacha l'maisa that you should do this. You see it right here. And he quotes, he heard it from, that's Reb Chaim Shita. He says that you should be machmir, I don't know what he calls it, machmir, and do the entire shel yad, and then do the shel rosh. And that's Rav Moshe Sternbach. This is in volume 1 of his Tshuvot, number 38. He repeats it in volume 4. Well, number 10, he's just mentioning it in the Hanhagos of Rav Chaim Brisker. He says that this is Rav Chaim's practice. So he sends me a nice letter explaining all about that. So I lost that. I'll get it in the second volume. I also didn't include letters. I didn't include letters. By the way, here, Rabbi Mazuz was in the news. Why? A big attack Saturday night against Smotrich, saying that Smotrich should have gone into the Netanyahu government. And okay, we don't need to be concerned with the politics, but I didn't include academic letters. I have lots and lots of academic letters. I think I have something here to you. Let me just show you here. Oh, yes, I do. I didn't include any academic letters. That could be a whole separate volume. But I'm going to show you here. Biography of Louis Jacobs just came out. Very interesting biography. And what does it say here? It talks about who Jacobs corresponded with. Look at these great figures. Sholem, Agus, Heschel, Finkelstein, Jonathan Sachs, Kellner, Petachovsky, Tishby, and Giza Vermes. Giza Vermes is a very interesting person. I sort of knew him. He was, during the Holocaust, he was raised Christian in Hungary, and he became a Catholic priest. And then he came back to Judaism and married, and his early books on the Dead Sea Scrolls were done while he was a Catholic priest, believe it or not. Then he writes, he also answered queries from dozens of students, one of whom he held in particularly high esteem was Marc Shapiro, now professor of Judaic Studies at the University of Scranton. So that was nice to see that in the book. And I have many, many letters, probably 25 letters, but that's not suitable for a sefer. So those are the different types of letters. Let me share with you two, maybe three, I think two letters. And the first one is from a very interesting figure, and I'll explain to you why I didn't include it. This I didn't lose. I had it, not just one, two letters. I will share them on this forum blog. Here, I'll show you just a picture of it so you see first page of it. Here's the first page of this letter. This is a 3-page letter. And so who is this letter from? Any of you, well, here, let me just show you the picture first. If you live in the New York area, you probably know who this character was. He just passed away. Moshe Beck. Moshe Beck was the head of Neturei Karta in America. And these are the guys that you see at the Israeli Day parades. When they learn Torah, when they do anything else, they're going from place to place with their signs. Anytime there's some Zionist event, you see them with their signs. They've created huge controversy because Satmar and others have completely rejected them. Why are they crazy? Well, let me show you an example. This is a video, and I'll point out to you who Moshe Beck is. Oops, I have to give sound so you hear this. And I'll tell you a little bit about who these people are, who it's maddening for sure. When Ahmadinejad came to the UN in 2007, lo and behold, he meets with Neturei Karta led by Rabbi, we can call him that, Beck. So watch this.
I'd like to ask humbly for permission for our senior rabbi, the distinguished Rabbi Moshe Dov Beck, to say the words of greeting for us.
And then he speaks in Yiddish. Let me just show you towards the end. Watch this. This is a real kavod for these people. Watch what happens.
God willing. God willing, you will be successful.
So you get to share a hug and a kiss with Ahmadinejad. These are the people who went. Moshe Beck is a Holocaust survivor from Budapest. He used to be Vizhnitz before he went off the reservation, I guess. Of course, he believes in the Holocaust. He knows the Holocaust happened, but they sent their people there to the Holocaust Denial Conference. And these are, I don't even know how to describe these people. It's you can say they're crazy, you can say they're evil, they're all of the above. I told the story once how after one of the the big thing in Washington about 2002, in support of Israel, these jokers were there, and then they came into one of the shows. I think it was the Georgetown Synagogue for Mincha. And the question was, do they throw them out or do they keep them there? I was told they allowed them to stay. I would have thrown them out, I think. But so he's the head of them, this Moshe Beck. And I actually engaged in correspondence with him. He wrote me one long letter, 3 pages, and another letter. And why didn't I include it in the book? I was asking about his ideology, about how had he be part of a movement when all the great rabbis disagree? It's not so simple because even Satmar disagrees with them. Satmar is anti-Zionist, but they don't believe in allying themselves with the enemies of the Jewish people. So those are the letters. Why didn't I include it? because basically I didn't want to disgrace the volume. I don't believe that someone like that just belongs in a serious work. I understand that years from now people will have to study his writings and understand the Neturei Karta, but I can't do it. I can't take it. Reading a few pages in it's enough to drive you crazy. But don't think that this is all Neturei Karta. This is Neturei Karta in America. As far as I know, there is no other Neturei Karta in America. You can let me show you something here. Why is my screen not here? You can go online. They have a website even. NKUSA, Neturei Karta International, in which you can read all about everything they do. That's what, and you can see this in Russian, Italian, Spanish, German, French, Arabic, Persian, Turkish. Where do they get the money to translate all this stuff and to do all this? There's no question that someone is funding them. Who's funding them? Is it Iran? Is it Hamas, Hezbollah? Who knows? Someone is funding them, and they're able to travel all over the world doing their crazy stuff. And that's Neturei, but that's not all Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta has existed since the beginning of the state of Israel. It's a break off from Agudas Yisrael. And you could be an honorable person and be in the Neturei Karta that you wouldn't mean the Neturei Karta. You don't, for theological reasons, you don't believe in the state of Israel. If someone doesn't believe in that because he thinks that you need the Mashiach to come, that's his business. If he's not doing anything to endanger Jews or anything like that, what am I going to say? I think it's unfortunate, but I don't have anything against him. In fact, Neturei Karta itself is such a small group, but it's split. Here is a sefer, Mohammed Kharma, which is by the Neturei Karta in Israel against these guys, the Beck followers, all against their whole approach. Their approach is to make peace with the. Well, let me just read you something. This is on page second section, page 25. He refers to a kuntras called Derech Hatzalah, which Beck wrote, which I don't have. It's not so complicated. I can go to Muncie and get it. That's where they're located, in Muncie. And he's trying to refute everything Beck says. So, and some of this stuff is shocking. So, for instance, I had no idea about that. Beck writes on page 43 of this Derech Hatzalah that you can even say to the Arabs, after they do a terrorist attack, Yafeh asitem sharagtem, that you did well, that you succeeded in killing. And that's called Hatzalah nefashos. And he says here that's it's chok machiv. It's what type of a joke is this? In other words, Beck's argument is that you have to kiss up to the non-Jews. So if they launch a bomb and they kill people, you send them congratulations that they were able to advance their cause, because that's going to, in the long run, that'll save more Jews. Because if they're able to force people to reject Zionism because of that, that'll save more Jews. And believe it or not, Beck even cited a Gemara. That's what I learned from this. Here's the Gemara. It's in Nedarim, not 22a. The Gemara relates, Ula on his ascent to Eretz Yisrael had two residents of Chozai join him. Obviously, these were not good characters. Because of a brawl between them, one arose and slaughtered the other. The assailant said to Ula, did I act properly? He said to him, yes, and opened the place of the slaughter, that is, cut it more so it'll die faster. When Ula came before Rav Yochanan, Ula said to him, perhaps heaven forbid I strengthen the hands of sinners by commending him. Ula said, after the guy killed him, the other guy says, oh, yeah, good job. He says, perhaps I sinned by commending him. I did so merely I was afraid he would kill me. Ula was worried that this guy, after he killed the other guy, would kill him. So when he said to him, hey, did I do a good job in killing him? Ula said, oh, yeah, good job. And so what did Rabbi Yochanan said? He said, you saved yourself by doing so. It's permitted to say words like that to save your own life. The question is how he could say to him, make sure you cut him properly. Then he cut him again. There's different explanations. One is that the person was a ghost, and since he's a ghost by a person and suffering, the murderer, it's okay to kill him faster. Just like the story of the Gemara, where one of the Tanaim said to raise, please don't keep the sound off, please, said to raise the fire. So the important thing from that is that here you see where Ula said, you did a good job killing to save his life. So that's what Beck said, that we can tell them you did a good job in killing because it's going to help us they won't come after us. They won't send terrorists against us. I have a letter which I published on the Square blog from the early years of the state, where the Neturei Karta send a letter to the leaders of the Palestinian leaders, saying, identifying that who we are, that we're a small group in Jerusalem, a few of us in Tiberias. In other words, they don't want them to come, when they do a terrorist attack, they don't want them to come into Mea Shearim and just randomly kill people. They'd rather them go after the others, the quasi-Jews, the Zionists, things like that. But this Neturei Karta person thinks that this is crazy. He says, he says to him that he says this is Rahmana Litzlan, what you're saying here, by saying that to the Arabs that it's good you kill Jews. You think that's Hatzalah? He says Hatzalah shall me. Who's it going to save? The Jews in Eretz Yisrael? You're telling them it's good that you kill. They're going to kill more. So what Hatzalah is there? And then he says if you're going to say Shabazem Matzilim Esayehudim Mea Shearim, you say you're going to save the Jews in Mea Shearim. Who said? And this is the Neturei Karta person saying this. Who says that you can say, it's okay to kill the Jew? It's good to kill that you kill the Jews of Tveria and Sfat as long as you don't kill us here. Who says that? Because even in these places you have Yehudim Ma'aminim. So there's an inner dispute among Neturei Karta. So after seeing who this Moshe Beck is and what his ideas are, I think it's clear why I feel that I couldn't include him in the book. Next time you're at the Israeli Day Parade or you see one of these bozos, you'll know who they are. This is a small American Monsey group of Neturei Karta. They're all intermarried with each other. It's like any of these, it's like the... what's that church? There's this crazy church that goes around and it protests in front of military funerals. It's like one family and a few hangers-on, a bunch of crazy people, and they attack America. I forgot what it's called now. Maybe someone will remember. Westboro Baptist. Thank you, Baruch. So they're like the Westboro Baptist Church. And although you can't break the law in America, and I would never say to break the law, a few years ago, his Beck's house and shul burnt down, and can't say that I was disappointed. And although the Sefer Torah burnt, that's no good. But they showed it on TV that you had all these like Haredim from Monsey out there, being very happy because this isn't about being a Zionist. This is about really being a traitor. That's what it is. So that's that letter. And then there's another letter I didn't include. Need to give you a little background about this letter. First of all, let me show you this. I'm going to talk about someone named Shabtai Cohen Rappaport. In 2016, I published a small post called An Unknown Picture. And I included this picture here. Here you have Rav Soloveitchik. He's wearing brown. Rav Soloveitchik like brown. They're at a wedding. I know who the wedding is. I know the wedding is. The wedding is Shabtai Cohen Rappaport. Here's Rav Moshe, and that's Rabbi Yitzhak Tendler, Moshe Tendler's father. This is at the wedding of Rivka to Shabtai Rappaport, who helped Rav Moshe edit many of the Igros Moshe. The wedding took place, as it says, I wrote here, the Pioneer Country Club on June 17th, 1971. I got that information from Shabtai Cohen Rappaport. I wrote, I thank Jack Prince, who was at the wedding, for allowing me to make a copy of the picture in his possession. I think it was one of the places I was at in Florida for Shabbos. I think it was Century Village. I was, if I'm not mistaken, eating Friday night dinner or Shabbos lunch at Jack's house. And I saw the picture and I asked him, could I later come back after Shabbos and take the picture? And he allowed me to, and I did, and I put it out there. When it comes to the internet, though, there's no copyright. I can't tell you how often that picture is reprinted, because there's only a few pictures that show Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Moshe. The other one that shows Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Moshe, I also put on the blog, but it was not an unknown picture. I know the family whose wedding it took place. It was in Atlantic City, as I recall. It was not an unknown picture, but I had it, so I put it on. This was completely unknown. I think I know of only 2 or 3 pictures, and that's a beautiful picture. So that picture is reprinted all the time. It was on Cross Currents not long ago. Everyone does it. And of course, no one knows that I discovered it. No one knows. They don't even know where it's at, where it took place, because if you Google images, you'll see that picture. That's life. That happens. What can you do? David Eisen kindly gave me, which he got, I believe, from Rabbi Kefet, the picture of Rabbi Soloveitchik doing the mitzvah tance with the rope, which I also put on the blog, and I thank David for that. But now, of course, people will use that picture, and they won't remember that our own David Eisen is the reason I had it. Okay, so why am I giving this introduction? Because Shabtai Cohen Rappaport is a Gaon. He's a genius. How do I know that? He hasn't published that much. I know that because someone who I respect, someone who, when he uses the word Gaon, he means it. He's not just one of these people who believes in the inflation of rabbinic titles. Just today on Lair House, there was an article I saw on the inflation of rabbinic titles. As I mentioned the very first day we did this a year ago, people are calling me Harav Gaon in the letters. It's meaningless. Yechiel Goldhaber, who I've mentioned before, he told me that Rav Shabtai Cohen Rappaport is very, very special Talmud Chacham. Introduction number 1. Introduction number 2, let me remind you of a person I've spoken about before in the past. His name is Dror Fixler. He is a genius of geniuses. He is a professor, as you can see, of electrical engineering and photonics at Bar Ilan. He's also a rabbi, a Talmud Muvhak of Rav Nachum Rabinovich. His main work is in the sciences, but in his side jobs, he taught himself Arabic. He translated the Ramos Perush Mishnah and a few Masechtas into Hebrew. He's written numerous Torah articles in all different areas. Here he is. He's also, I just saw a Jerusalem Post, whether this new thing that you'll be able to drive a car just by using your brain without actually doing any actions. He writes about that. You can watch him. He now is a CEO. He's involved in cybersecurity, very much involved in China. That's where I met him. I had corresponded with him for years. I met him. He runs all sorts of programs. He used to go to China after COVID. He will again, and he has Chinese students who come to study with him in Bar Ilan. He's been giving. It says here he was given the President's Fellowship, International Fellowship Award of the Chinese Academy of Sciences. I mean, he's done an enormous amount. Okay, so why do I tell you all this? Because the letter I'm going to tell you about from Shabtai Cohen Rappaport, in the end, it turns out I didn't need to publish it. I didn't publish it, and then I regretted it, but it turns out in the end I didn't need to. But because the answer most of the questions were asked, but not exactly all of them. My particular one wasn't. What am I referring to? I'm in Beijing. I was fortunate. I went to Beijing. I went to China twice in 1 year. And the first time I was in Beijing. I come into the shul, and lo and behold, I sit in the Chabad, and I sit down after the davening and the meal next to someone who looks familiar. And lo and behold, it's Dror Fixler, who we had been corresponding. We had just sent emails to each other like 2 weeks before that. So this is great. I had opportunity. I heard all about Rav Nachum Rabinovich interesting shitot. He was in Toronto, the famous ones about using key cards on Shabbos and other things. But then we got into talk about eating in China, and they're eating everywhere. And Dror Fixler tells me, that he holds, based on Rav Shabtai Cohen Rappaport, that you could eat in vegan restaurants. You can go to a vegan restaurant and eat there. It's no problem with kashrus. Although he did say to me, but I wouldn't do it in China. I said, well, why not? He says, because I know the Chinese. I've been working here many years. They're not honest, many of them. They'll say things that they'll cut corners. I don't know, maybe this YouTube will be canceled. Well, actually, no, now you can say it, that maybe it came from the lab in Wuhan. But until about a month ago, if you said that, you asked Brett Weinstein and others, your channel will be shut down and Twitter would shut you down. But I think we realize that you can't trust the Chinese if they tell you where the virus came from. So Dror said to me, you can't trust them he would not trust, based on his experience, he would not trust a vegan restaurant there. But he says to me, if you go to a place where they take the laws seriously, that's a question with Chalav Yisrael also. Not Chalav Yisrael, the milk. If you go to a place like the European Union where the people take the laws seriously, you can rely that if it's milk, it's real milk. But if you go to certain countries, let's say in South America, where no one takes it seriously, who says it could be a non-kosher milk, not from a cow. He says to me that, and he explains to me the whole idea, and he says that I went together with Rav Shabtai Cohen Rappaport. We went together to a restaurant in Cyprus, a vegan restaurant. So that now I'm really interested, and I have all sorts of questions, because is this permitted? Can we eat in vegan restaurants? So I will. Well, let's speak about some of the issues. Years ago, of course, we all did. I told you, doesn't make it right though, but I told you the stories. When I was in Oxford, we all ate in this vegan restaurant. So you could say, okay, well, maybe that's not right. On the other hand, I was in Nairobi. in 1990, and the rabbi of the shul, he was a Neturei Yisrael guy, as I recall, he told me 2 restaurants I could eat in, vegan restaurants. I was told by someone in my shul that when he was in Hong Kong in the 90s, a Chabad rabbi told him the same thing, in a vegan restaurant. There is a rabbi, I won't mention his name because he might not want it, but this is an absolute fact because I heard it from his daughter. He would eat in Zen Palette on the Upper West Side. Doesn't exist anymore, but remember it. I guess there's other Zen Palettes. It's a vegan restaurant. I'm not completely vegan because it also had eggs. Is this okay? What's going on here? No hashgacha I'm talking about. So what are the problems with vegan restaurants? The way I see it, there's 2 problems. There's who says they're telling the truth? They tell you they're vegan, but maybe that's why we have mashgichim. Who says they're telling the truth? Number 1. Number 2, bishul akum. Let's leave aside for now the question of who says they're telling the truth, because there's good reason to believe that real vegans, for religious reasons and others, you can rely on them, and especially when there's laws about advertising. But the real issue is bishul akum. We'll see why I say that's the real issue in a minute. What is bishul akum? The rabbis tried to keep us from intermarrying, and they made certain decrees. Not all the decrees lasted. The sages tell us that a decree that isn't accepted by the population is not binding. That's the interesting question. Let's say the rabbis ban something and the people don't accept it. So then it's not binding. I've always had this question. The first people not to listen to the rabbis are sinners. But then when the gezerah, which is no longer considered binding, do we then go back retroactively and say that since it doesn't become a gezerah, therefore the first people who did not follow it, they're okay? Or do we say no, that they were the sinners? I think that's the answer. They're the sinners, but if enough sinners do something, then it's not considered, it doesn't become standard accepted. So one of the things they forbid was non-Jew. You can't eat food cooked by a non-Jew. It can lead to feelings of connection, intimacy, and lead to intermarriage. We know obviously about wine as well. However, there are certain leniencies, certain heterim. Mark, I'll get to your point. Mark asked, what about grape juice as an ingredient in vegan restaurants? Of course, we'll see what Dror Fixler says. You can't buy anything that has grape juice in it. You can't buy anything, but wait till you hear my question though. I have a different question, but we'll get to it. So there are some heterim, though. One of the heterim is that anything that you can eat in a raw state, you can eat it in a cooked state. So for example, if you have, let's say, string beans, I guess you eat them raw, you can, and if they're cooked, it's not a problem. Today, you can make a very good case that there's no issue of bishul akum with tuna, a restaurant that makes tuna, because you have sushi or whatever. I don't eat sushi, but I believe tuna is in sushi, I think, or other fish. I don't think you could have, I think it means that the actual fish that you eat raw, then if it's cooked, it's not bishul akum. It doesn't apply to all fish. So that's first of all, that's a very big heter. If you eat raw, then you can eat it cooked. There's also a shita, famous shita, the Raiva does, that someone who's hired to cook for you, it's not bishul akum. Because if you have a cook, if you're in a restaurant, let's say, or if you have a chef, this isn't what the rabbi said, that when you come together, someone makes you a meal, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? That could lead to problems. So there is such a heter cited in the Rishonim, but this was not accepted generally. This view was not accepted as mainstream psak, that if someone's hired, you can, it's not considered bishul akum. However, it has been used in various cases. So for instance, for someone who's an older person, in Israel, you have or in America also, someone who's living by himself and you have a non-Jewish person that lives with them. Today, we don't have pilot lights. The old heter used to be the pilot light was always on, so it wasn't such a problem. Today, we don't have pilot lights. And also you have an oven, and as far as I know, even in a microwave, it's considered bishul akum. So I can tell you, I spoke to a posek about this. He'll remain nameless because I don't know, again, if he wants to be known. And he thought that there's definitely room to permit based upon this. I spoke to him about au pair, because in my community, that's the big issue. You have these people, the women who work also, and you have an au pair, and you don't want to get a Jewish au pair. It's a big problem. I didn't get a Jewish au pair because, let's say, they're not religious. You can't really find a religious one. If you get one from Israel, which you can, they're going to ask me for the keys Friday night to go driving. I don't want a non-religious Jew living in my house. I have to, if it's a non-Jew, it's fine. They go away on the weekends, things like that. But you have a problem. So I spoke to a posek about an au pair, which I didn't really need to use it, but I was curious about it. There's another permission you can have for the old people, not just through the Ravid's view that it's hired. And that's based on this Rambam. Where's the Rambam? Here. Look in the Rambam in, hold on, I made a note of this Rambam. Where is it? The Rambam, is this Parak 2? In the Rambam, yeah, in Hilchos Shabbos, Parak 2, chapter 10 says as follows. When a sick person is not dangerously ill, that is, we have this idea of chol sheyesh bo sakana and chol she'ein bo sakana. So even if he's not dangerously ill, that is, he's ill, but it's not an imminent death or anything like that, all his needs should be cared for by a Gentile. What is implied? We may tell a Gentile to perform forbidden labors on his behalf. And that includes cooking, baking, bringing medicine. In other words, what we see from this Rambam, and the Radbaz mentions this, is that a chol she'ein bo sakana on Shabbos, you can have a non-Jew do everything for him. Torah violations. And it says specifically cooking for him. So obviously, he can do bishul akum, which is just a rabbinic violation. If you can cook on Shabbos, you can cook during the week. And many people hold that all old people have the status of a chol she'ein bo sakana. That is, all old people have the status of someone, an 80-year-old person needs hot food. They have the status of someone who's ill. By the way, Ramosha Feinstein held that this is not an issue in industrial production. If they have a big factory somewhere, it's not like they're cooking in the house, they're using with the huge vats, or someone in China is making it. Ramosha held that there's no idea of bishul akum here. The OU and the other hashkachas generally do not accept this. They don't accept it heter. We spoke, by the way, about Rav Abadi a lot. All those big leniencies, just read the ingredients. He's very strict on bishul akum. He holds that. Actually, hold on. Let me tell you the other heter, and then you'll see Rav Abadi. The other heter is, the condition is that for something to be bishul akum, it has to be what's called ola al shulchan melachim. It has to be something you would serve at a state dinner, let's say, a royal feast to a king or something like that. That's going to be the big issue we're going to speak about now. And I think Rabbi Kelman's right. We're not going to end. So I'll speak for 3 more minutes, introduce the case, and then next week I'll go through it. And then I'll have to give us, so I'll find another letter to do it. But I don't want to cut this off because I have some good stuff, some stuff you'll find interesting. But let me say a few more words about this. What does it mean, food that can be served as a state dinner? By the way, this isn't just a question of hashgacha. All these Indian type restaurants you see in New York and other places that are under hashgacha, they all are cooked by non-Jews. So it's not just a question of hashkacha or not hashkacha. If bishul akum is going to be the problem, then every one of these Indian type of restaurants that in the New York area, they're really not under the mainstream hashkachas. They're sort of like fringe hashkachas. But if you go into small towns in America where they don't have kosher food, you have mainstream, the rabbis giving hashkacha to these Indian places. And yet all these, if you're going to say it's bishul akum, none of these things are acceptable, because the non-Jew doesn't come in every day. This is a yotzei v'nichnas, coming in and out situation. And indeed, Rabbi Abadi, who has been so liberal and lenient on many areas of kashrus, he is the most stringent on these things and says that all these Indian restaurants and everything else are bishul akum, absolutely forbidden, because he says that today, even at a state dinner, you'll serve it to anything. He says, what does he say? Fine, you won't serve popcorn or French fries, but basically everything else would be served today. Potatoes, obviously, you'd serve potatoes. The Chachmas Adam already says that potatoes are bishul akum. The Aruch HaShulchan, however, says that potatoes are a poor man food. So the Aruch HaShulchan says that potatoes wouldn't be bishul akum. But can anyone today say that potatoes, you could be at the presidential dinner and they'd serve you potatoes? Fancy potatoes at weddings all the time. So can anyone really honestly make the claim that potatoes, that's what Rav Abadi says. Can anyone honestly say that potatoes are not bishul akum? I'm not talking about French fries or potato chips. I'm talking about a potato dish. So this is a big problem. And as you will see, the issue of the vegan restaurants exploded in Israel 2 years ago when Rabbi Dr. Fixler published in Techumen his article. We'll see the response. Then we'll see Shabtai Cohen report, and then I'll share with you my question, which wasn't raised in Fixler's article and wasn't raised in the response. The response, by the way, well, here, I'll just show you so you see, and then we'll end here. After Fixler, and I'll tell you about Fixler's article next week, look what you have here. None other than Rav Yitzchak Yosef attacks, they don't call him rabbi here, Professor Fixler. I found another article on it where they call him Rav Professor. But the attack is only about bishul akum. If you look at the attack, it's only about the idea of bishul akum, not about the idea that maybe this vegan restaurant is secretly bringing in lard or something. So I'll explain to you next class what Fixler's point in Techumen was, how he makes the claim that vegan restaurants are kosher, except in places like China. Then I'll tell you about Rav Shabtai Rapport's angle here, and my question of Shabtai Rapport, which wasn't raised in Fixer's article, and I thought it was a clear question that would mean that vegan restaurants can't be kosher. And I'll explain, and then I will tell you what Shabtai Cohen Rapport replied to me. Because it was an email reply, I thought, well, maybe it's not really a tshuva, a letter with, he just responds to my questions, not with lichvod, et cetera, et cetera. I said, I don't need to include it. Then I regretted not including it, but now I don't need to include it in the next volume because at the very end of Fixler's article in Techumen, which I'll speak about, he says as follows: Haskama hilchatit lemamar zeh, halachic approval of this article, kibalti me'Rav Agon Shabtai Rapport, I received from Rabbi Rapport, Sha'af Nahaken Halacha L'Maisa. Rabbi Shabtai Cohen Rapport himself ate in vegan restaurants. B'Misnat Tivonit should be in Leipzig, in Germany, in Leipzig. Uvenesia Meshutefet Iti L'Kafrisin. And we went together and ate in the vegan restaurant in Cyprus. So, look, I'm not their posek. You can ask your local rabbi, all these things. But if Rav Shabtai Cohen Rapport says that you can eat in a vegan restaurant, and wait till you see where YU comes in on this next week. I'll tell you about Yeshiva University. Wait till you see this. I think you'll be quite surprised, some of the YU people, how they also sort of gave their approval to this. And then I think I can see already, I will have time to at least one more letter. I can't keep doing this, right, Kelman, because then I'll never end. But I do have a letter, either dealing with Chabad, a letter dealing with David Berger and Chabad to the reason I didn't include this letter was because it had to be anonymous. The rabbi who wrote it is anonymous, and I didn't want to publish an anonymous letter. If I don't do that, hold on, I'll tell you what other letter I have here. No, it doesn't, not important. I have other letters. I'll do the Chabad letter, maybe. I think Baruch will get a kick out of that. Okay, we will go one more week then. I was wrong. I really like Hellman. If I went 20 minutes, 25 more minutes, we could finish, but I want to get back to finishing on time. So we'll do it next class.
We'll do something extra next week. It's okay. 53 weeks. It's like 52 weeks for the year, and then one is like, Lamala.
And by the way, it's a worthwhile topic. Whether it's halacha l'maaseh or not, that's not for me to decide. But when one of these liberal rabbis from Maryland, not a YCT graduate, he came out with instructions as to how to eat in a vegan restaurant, he was attacked by a certain person as basically, out of the fold, that sort of thing. And I'm not saying it's right. You should do it. It could be halachically there's a problem, but understand that Rav Shabtai Cohen Rappaport is not a simple person here. We're dealing with great Talmud Chacham and Rafael Fixler also. So I'll talk about some of the halachic issues. And Techumen published the article. And Techumen's not publishing heretical stuff or anything. Techumen published Fixler's article with a response from Rabbi Weitman, as I recall, is Rabbi Weitman, Rabbi Yonah Manuel's son-in-law, and then Fixer also had his response to that. So, and then I'll tell you what Sohar has to say about it, and also another rabbi. So we'll get to that next class. Rabbi Kelman says that the Rabbanit from Efrat is going to be starting a series. Justin says in Nefesh HaRav, I believe Rav Shechter notes that the Rav held like the Rambam and finished Shal Yad prior to Shal Rosh. I don't recall seeing that. I believe you. I can't recall everything, but I would only say, Justin, I don't think it would be so much as holding like the Rambam as holding like a Zaidi. As Rav Sternbach says, Reb Chaim did it that way. So if Reb Chaim did it, I'm assuming Rav Moshe did it, and then the Rav did it. So that's in the Briskers, they have family traditions. Obviously, the Reb Chaim would do it because of the Rambam, but it's really Reb Chaim. I have to check that. Isser said the Rav. Okay, so here we got it. The Rav also wound the Shel Yad all the way down, like Reb Chaim and like the Teimanim. Well, thank you, Isser. Yeah, I hadn't seen what Isser said before. I never davened with the Rav Shachris. I davened mincha with him for a whole summer, but and we used to read the Torah for him because he was at home. He didn't go to Minyan, and it was very difficult. We'd bring him to the Young Israel Brookline, so we'd read Kriyas Torah for him in the afternoon. But I never davened Shachris with him. Thank you very much for that. I was at Century Village. I was in Boca. That was the one I was at. I don't think I've ever been to Deerfield, but I think it was. If anyone here is from Deerfield, wherever Jack Prince lives, I don't think it was Boynton. I think it might have been Boynton. No, I'm confused, but I believe it was Century Village because I think I was a scholar in residence there. That's a very nice rabbi. Kranzler lives there. Gershon Kranzler's brother. That's where it was. Barry Hartman says, Rabbi Barry Hartman, after the terror attack which killed Rav Moshe Tursky, the son of Professor Israel Tursky and grandson of the Rav, the online forward published a picture of Yitzhak Tursky, Rav, Talmud Rebbe Boston, and Rav Moshe, whose beard and hair are black. It was the wedding of Atara and Yitzhak Tursky. I have a picture, which I published on the Svarim blog, of the wedding, and it was in no, sorry, it's a picture of Tursky's wedding, and Rav Chaim Heller is sitting there together with a bunch of other rabbis. If you can't find it, I can show you that picture. I haven't seen that picture. If someone has it, send it to me. That would be very interesting to see that picture. I have to tell you that there's Professor Tursky's son-in-law was rabbi in Riverdale, and I was once there for Shabbos. And I almost asked, could I see the wedding album? But then I chickened out because I like to see these albums. I like to see, you learn a lot from seeing the family albums and the pictures. So I want to see who's there. Mark asked, what about grape juice as an ingredient in vegan restaurants? Indeed, there is grape juice. There's vinegar, wine vinegar. So wait till my question next week. What they say is don't order that. Just don't order that. But is that enough? What about the kalim? So that's my question. Mel says, Rabbi Libos gave a shiur where I listed many reasons why it's not okay to eat in vegan restaurants. Okay, so we'll see how he falls into with, Rabbi Ari Leibowitz is now teaching at YU. As we'll see, he's at oddsness with one of his fellow Rosh Yeshiva. But I don't want to say any more till next week. I'm afraid if I say it now, I'll take it down before next week. Vegan will not serve tuna, obviously, correct. But the issue is bishalakum. So, for example, can a non-Jew cook for you? Let's say if you travel, for instance, if you can, Rabbi Abadi he has a whole list of instructions how to travel kosher. You bring your own pot. You go into the kitchen. You can't be afraid though. I did this once. You have to be willing to go into the kitchen, explain to the chef, and they usually know. When I was in Bermuda, the chef said, I know all about it. I used to cook kosher. But you go in, you give him the pot, and he'll make it up for you. So the question is, can you give, look, you can always turn it on, but sometimes it's not so simple. If it's already on, they don't want to be bothered. Could you give a non-Jew, let's say you have a non-Jew in your house, like a servant or something, and you say, I'm going to be home in an hour, put up the tuna for me. If tuna is bishalakum, you can't. But if tuna is not bishalakum, I spoke to the mashgiach at the Pesach program I go to, and he said that this, in the world of hashkacha, he said this is a big issue now. Has sushi, and he told me that he asked Rabbi Tendler, and Rabbi Tendler, as I recall, said that he doesn't think sushi is mainstream enough today, in that it would not be bishalakum. And I'm saying, does Rabbi Tendler not pay attention to what's served today at the weddings? All you have to do is go to my little place called Aaron's, like Cedar Market in Teaneck, and they got these 2 or 3 guys in the whole Japanese outfit there. They're making sushi all day and all night. Everyone will eat sushi except for me, it seems. So I don't see how that's not mainstream. And I asked the postsec. I don't want to say his name because whatever, but he didn't say anything. He said it's a good question. It needs to be thought about. Those are the type of answers I don't like. If I'm asking a question, because it's not like he's going to think about it and then get back to you. When they say it's a good question, I have to think about it. He's sort of like punting the ball. Okay, well, so next class we'll do with this whole vegan restaurants, bishalakum situation, and maybe more problems, not just bishalakum. And then we'll do the Chabad letter or another letter, and then we will conclude as bali neder. Thank you, Rabbi Kelman.
Thank you. No, we'll conclude your bali neder, but I think we'll conclude. I said only 2 weeks. I didn't think it'd go 3. So anyways, thank you. 53 weeks, 52 weeks, 53 weeks, what's an extra week, extra. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Laila Tov. Tomorrow morning, Rachel Sharansky Danziger continuing her series on storytelling and the rise of kings. And then Wednesday, Simi Peters on Yirmiyahu, continuing her series in Yirmiyahu, of course, of Torah of the Week, Moshe Sokolow. Thursday, Shuli Mishkin is back for our tours of Israel. And Thursday night, Rabbi Yossi Adler of Congregation, what is it, Rinat Yisrael, and what's the second name? Rinat in Teaneck. Well-known Rabbi Adler, principal, Rosh Yeshiva ABC. I'll be giving the Parsha Shir Thursday at 8:30. I'll be giving Pirkei Avot at 9:30 Friday morning, Rabbi Liebtag Sunday morning. Back to 11 o'clock, by the way. Those who weren't at Rabbi Liebtag's class, he asked if we could move back. We started 11, then we moved to 11:15. So now we're going to go back. Rabbi Liebtag's class for the rest of the summer will be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Okay, and we look forward to seeing you all. And everybody have a wonderful night. Thank you, Doctor, and all the best. Invite a friend and enjoy. Be well, be safe, and all good things. Laila Tov.